He says, you're the only person I know that's planned their retirement before you even started working. Well, Matt, thanks for joining me today. You know, we're always talking about let's be honest. And one of my favorite subjects is finance. You know, obviously, making money, spending money, saving money, investing money. I had, you know, my dad one time told me years ago, I think I was 16 or 17 years old. He says, you're the only person I know that's planned their retirement before you even started working.
That's beautiful.
I took that as a compliment, you know, because I had all these thoughts about finances that, you know, aren't typical for someone 15, 16, 17 years old. But what I'm finding out, and this is what really concerns me, is they're not typical for 40, 50, 60-year-olds quite often either. You know, it's like, wait a minute. Aren't you concerned with your finances? Let's talk about finances. So we can talk about problems that we, you know, get into. And it's not, oh, I bought a stock and I shouldn't have bought the stock because it didn't go up, you know, but it's taking our income, whatever that income is. Some people are going to make lots of money. Some people aren't going to make so much money, but it's, what are we doing with that money? Are we making wise decisions in terms of our finances? And you and I we were talking a little bit ago about, you know, different ages.
Right.
And okay, you're in your 20s. What do you want to do in your 20s?
Man, you want to grind. Just grind to oblivion.
Yeah. You know, let's get started. Let's get some investment. Let's get some savings. But what happens in today's society? What happens honestly in your 20s?
Oh, in your 20s, you're going skiing. You're going to Vegas for this thing. You're hitting Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
You got to hit Mardi Gras at least once.
Yeah. You know, the YOLO.
Right.
You know, you only live once. That's my excuse for everything. That's why I'm going to go do this. Yeah, it's not the best, but I got a credit card. Let's go. Okay. So when we talk about financial, intelligence, we talk about making good decisions. They're not always the decisions that are going to make us the happiest right now, but when are they going to make us happy? Down the road somewhere, when we have interest working in our favor, on our behalf, versus going, I owe all this money, so I've got interest working against me.
Right. And I think a lot of people struggle with the concept that you are making yourself happy. It's just a future self.
Yeah.
Right. Like, stop looking at yourself now as the only self that you're going to have to care for. That's the whole nature of a savings account. A savings account, you're not eating in this moment. You're not exchanging it for goods and services in this moment. You're looking to the future self. That's me next week. That's me next month, next year, saying, hey, that person, I'm the only one looking out for that person because my parents aren't worried about me anymore now, today, or in a year. So it's understanding that you're still taking care of yourself. You're still having fun. You're just not having fun today.
Yeah. And, you know, when we talk about financial decisions, I've been very blessed because I had phenomenal mentors. I had people, you know, my parents. My dad was born in 1929, my mom in 1930, right at the start of the most severe depression our country's ever known. I'm very blessed. My parents were born, my father 1929, my mom 1930, right at the start of the Depression. So they had this ingrained necessity. They didn't have choices of what they were going to do with money because they just flat didn't have any money.
Right.
And so they carried that throughout their lives. And that's one of the things that I think we do is we have a tendency to spend whatever money we have. So as our income, we always think, oh, I'll do better if I have more money. So hopefully, you know, if we're on a salary basis, oh, I make $3,000 a month, I have to live like this. Oh, I make $4,000 a month. The idea is I'll just always make more money and that'll fix everything. Rather than, okay, I'm making $3,000 a month. I need to live on $2,500. I need to be frugal. You know, I like to listen to smart people. You know, Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett. Charlie Munger was Warren Buffett's right-hand man for 40 years. He just passed away, bless his soul. But these are the richest guys in the world. And what do they talk about? Living frugally. Warren Buffett still lives in the same house he bought in the 1960s.
Why? With a Lionel train set up in the attic and a racquetball court in the basement.
Yeah.
Right.
And he bought his original house for, I think, $31,000 or something, $37,000, and now it's worth $1.5 million. But he didn't go buy the big house on the hill. He didn't allow his expenditures to expand with his income. And that's one of the first rules of financial independence and developing some type of investments in the future, some kind of legacy life, is let's live frugally. And it doesn't. The idea in today's society is that's gonna curtail my happiness. That I'm not going to have any fun. I'm not going to be popular. I need to wear this. I need to buy this. I need to, live in this neighborhood. I need to drive this particular car. Those are all things that are going to keep us from developing that investment pool that, you and I have talked about, whether you invest in whatever it is. You can invest in stocks or art or houses or whatever, but have something for the future.
Right. And it's an interesting problem that people run into, because I think the concept of a budget, a lot of people say, well, look, we're working with a budget, right? But as their income increases, their budget also increases.
Exactly.
Now, look, we don't necessarily need to be living in like the 1-bedroom hovel that we all enjoyed, after we graduated from high school or college. You have a certain increase in expenditure that's appropriate and necessary, because you don't have to live on starvation wages as you make more money.
Sure.
But past a certain point, even if your income doubled, your lifestyle actually shouldn't change. I was very fortunate in one of my previous businesses to, in a 24-month period, essentially double the income without doubling any overhead.
Amazing. Yeah.
Right. Very fortunate. My life didn't change at all. There was no meaningful alteration in my consumer consumption or trends, which was really interesting. What we did end up doing is we invested a little bit more, and then we just saved, because we realized, okay, look, we're in a phase of excess, which is great. We have this money coming off, but I don't know what I'm going to need this money for later. I know I don't need it now to have like a fancier dinner. I don't need a fancier car. We don't need fancier trips. We took one trip to Disneyland
Sure.
in the summer. And
there if I can interrupt, you still had an enjoyable life, didn't you?
Yes.
See, the idea with so many people these days is, I'm not going to enjoy life if I don't spend everything, if I don't do these vacations, if I don't go on these trips or whatever. And it's interesting. You've experienced it. You still had a good life, didn't you?
Right.
You still had enjoyable times with your wife, and you still had times memories and sharing and sharing adventure, all these things, without expanding your life to exactly where your income was.
Right. Right, because when you go from let's say $10,000 income per month to $20,000 income per month, most people's budgets go from $10,000 to $20,000
or more.
Right,
or
right.
more.
That's another. I have a dear friend whose income went from about $200 to $300 up to about $700 for a period of time. He was selling a very, very fancy, cutting edge medical device, and I think his expenditures went from the $200 to like $750.
Right.
Like even though he tripled his income, he spent more than the triple.
Exactly. And that's, I mentioned my parents. My parents grew up and they never let go of that. They never let go of that. Save, put things away. Don't spend, even my dad, bless his heart, never made more. I think we found a pay stub when we were cleaning out his things. He topped out at $48,000. And yet when he retired, he was a millionaire, and he raised 4 kids. And we didn't feel like we were,
ever went without,
terribly poor or anything. We didn't have a terrible upbringing. And yet what I didn't know was my dad was deferring 20% of his compensation, which means if he was getting paid $48,000, take 20% off the top, that's $9,600. He was putting that into what's called deferred compensation. He worked for the state. So he wasn't even getting paid the measly $48,000 the state would pay him. He was only taking $48,000 less, $9,600 a year. So he was putting it away so that he could hopefully retire. He never actually did retire, but to have some form of investment, some form to set people up in the future. And as not trying to get too far ahead right now, but talking about generational wealth. How do we develop savings and investments that will help the next generation instead of just thinking about you and me and our lives right now? How are we going to help people in the future?
I'm very, very similar to you. That's a great story about you figuring out establishing a retirement plan in your teens. When I was 21, I started doing the exact same thing. And I started reading a lot of articles figuring out, okay, look, I didn't grow up with a lot of money and I didn't have anybody helping me with the idea of money. So I had to do all the education on my own. And I remember reading an article. There are all these articles emphasizing, hey, take this group on as a financial planner, or take this person on, they'll help you. And all of these articles talking about this person saved up, $1.6 million and they're not even tapping into it yet or something along those lines. But the thing that kept getting me is all of these people, the goal was just to make it to the end of your life with still having a little bit of money left. Not a lot, not an abundance, not passing on a lot, but it was, hey, you need to be able to take care of your own expenses so your children don't have to do that, which
Sure.
I think is absolutely honorable. Like, I'm not putting any of that down. But there was no aspiration of you're going to have so much abundance, you're actually going to have to worry about how you pass this on. It was solely around the idea that you're going to have just enough to get over the finish line. And those were the goals that they were trying to establish for most people.
Sure.
And yeah, that's fine, but that's not a generational thing. That's a one lifetime thing. And wonderful that you were able to make it through that lifetime in a prosperous way that you felt good about. But if anybody has aspirations for actual generational wealth, that's like, we're so far beyond that conversation.
Yeah.
You're just taking care of yourself.
Yeah, and that's where I hope to have some impact and changing people's lives going forward. In my securities brokerage, we managed a lot of money for a lot of people, and what I found was people in their 50s and 60s were still not saving, not putting any money away, and not looking at, okay, what do I need for the future? What am I going to put away, not just for themselves, like you said, just, hey, I want to spend my last dollar the day I die.
Right.
But talking about generational wealth, and they had these were people, some of my clients made a substantial amount of money, but they had increased they had enlarged their life. They had enlarged their spending. They went from the 1,500 foot house to the 3,000 foot house to the 6,000 foot house to the, from the car that barely ran to the, blah, 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 on and on and on to where now they're driving $80,000 cars. They've expanded their lives continually rather than expanding their investments. So one of the things I started with my clients was one of the points I made I said, don't tell me how much you make. Because everybody pretty much knows that. Oh, I make $40,000 a year, I make $100,000, I make $500,000, whatever it is. Tell me how much you saved and invested last year. And that's a whole different ballgame. And people stopped and went, it was just a different concept. Oh, well, I make $100,000 a year. How much did you save last year? How much did you invest last year? And that's what's going to push us forward in terms of developing that wealth. And it's a whole different world in terms of how we make decisions. Because if I look at it and say, okay, I make $100,000 a year, I want to save $20,000. How am I going to do that? Am I going to buy the brand new car? Am I going to buy the fancy model? Now, I've got a car that's 3 years old and it runs pretty well and it gets me around, but it's not the new one. So am I going to go to the dealership and get talked into a new car and, slap down whatever money it takes and then get on a payment plan? Or is that going to help me save whatever, in my example, the $20,000? The answer is obviously no. And so when we talk about financial plans, financial savings, moving forward with possibly enough wealth that we can develop for ourselves and then maybe leave something for the next generation, we've got to start thinking today. And I love Dave Ramsey. The guy's helped a lot of people with his finance. He says, the easiest thing to do is change. And yet the hardest thing to do is what? Change. So we've got to look at that and say, okay, I can change. I can develop, because we have people say, well, my friends expect me to do this. So we get into these excuses of why we spent the money. Oh, well, I've been working hard. Well, I got a raise. I got a bonus. I didn't expect this. Oh, my accountant found a problem with my taxes and saved me some money. There's an opportunity to what? There's an opportunity to invest more, or there's an opportunity to spend more. And that's where we make these changes in terms of how are we going to propel ourselves forward. One of the things I asked my clients also was, think back on your lifetime. And these obviously aren't very young people just getting started. Sure. But I would say, what's the happiest time in your life? Because we try to tell ourselves that spending money equates to happiness. And yet when I ask my clients, and to a person, not one person ever told me the happiest time in my life was when I was spending the most money. A lot of times, especially if it's a couple and they've been around a while, maybe they have kids, they've raised kids, they would say, it was when we were in our first house and we had almost nothing. But my Lord, we were happy.
Yeah.
And then I say, well, what's wrong with your 6,000-foot house now and your, 2 cars that you're making lease payments on and your kids going to private school? And is this the happiest time in your life? No. So what we've got to get away from is relating happiness equals spending, not just up to our income, but possibly more than our income.
Well, yeah.
Does that make sense?
100%. It's interesting you say this. I was talking to my son just today when I was dropping him off at school, and I said, listen, we've moved to Idaho. It's a great life here. And, he's not very old, so I can't go into great detail. But what I was trying to express to him is, look, when we were living before we moved in California, we were making a lot of money. There was a lot of money coming in, but we were no happier. And in fact, I would say we were less happy for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, we had a vacation cabin. That was awesome. And we could, do little trips. And we were, again, we still made good investments. But the point that I kept emphasizing to him was like, look, that tri-tip I made on Saturday night that was really, really good. Did that tri-tip taste any different in California when we were making more money? Right? The video game you play, and we've since taken away tech from them, but I said, look, the video game you play, is that video game really fun if you're playing by yourself? No, it's only fun if you have us hanging out with you, cheering you on. When we do our trip to Disneyland, because we try to go, like once, now it's once every couple of years because it's so far away. But the idea is, hey, how much you want to go to Disneyland by yourself? You don't? Well, then what's the actual value in Disneyland? It's the people you're there with. So really trying to emphasize to him, look, it's not the money. It's not the money you're making. It's not the money you're spending. It's not the tri-tip you're buying. It's the people you're hanging out with. It's the meaningful relationships that you have that are going to bring you the most joy. And again, that's just my individual idea of success. But
so wait a minute. Let me get this straight. You're telling me that happiness isn't because I took selfies and posted them all on showing people how successful my life is, and
trying to get other people to appreciate what you're doing while you're taking a selfie.
Yeah.
And like you're not even happy taking a selfie.
I had a friend that, and he's a very successful doctor, good friend of mine. We went to school together, about 105 years ago. Anyway, he was where was he? He was someplace relatively exotic, like I think he was around the pyramids or something. He said there was a group of younger people that spent over an hour trying to pose and get the right selfie so that they could post it on social media. And he said he just, they went on this different tour and they were looking at, I think it was pyramids. Anyway, he came back and they were still standing trying to get now get over here. Now, get the light. And so are we really working to build a successful financial world for ourselves? Or are we trying to exemplify that? Are we? Right.
Now, again, to your point, we did not fall when we moved from California to Idaho. Our income did not fall to the point where we couldn't afford the tri-tip. So we have been blessed with a certain level of financial stability.
Sure.
in both arenas. But the excess that we experienced in California did not meaningfully in any way change. Like, we're still sleeping on the same mattresses. We're still eating the same tri-tip. We're still driving the same cars. Like, it doesn't, the things that are 99% of our life have not changed. Yet we spend, at least I see a lot of my friends and people I'm in the community with, spending 99% of their life trying to chase that excess dollar that won't affect 99% of their actual lived experience.
Yeah. And that, when we talk about this and what are we giving up?
Right.
And what we're giving up is freedom. What we're giving up is opportunity. Lots of times in our lives, some opportunity will come along and say, I wish I could do that, but I got to stick with my job. I got to stick with the paycheck. I got to, I've got these bills. I wish I could, whatever it is, take that opportunity, possibly start a new business, possibly change careers, or maybe just take 2 weeks off and go on some trip of a lifetime. But what we've done is we've spent all of our money. We don't have savings. And so we're locked into what we know we have to do. And so when I talk to people about, putting together financial plans and being fiscally responsible and fiscally intelligent, and it doesn't involve buying a brand new car every couple of years, or wearing the fanciest suits or whatever. What I talk to them about is the opportunity and the freedom they have in the future. My son just finished a baseball career in college, 5 years, and I had the most wonderful time following his team around. And I would be one of the only parents at his away games, and we traveled. We went to Arizona, we went to Texas, we went to we went all over the place. And I didn't realize this, but the other parents were still working. The other parents had to stay. They probably would have liked to have supported their sons and been at those games and enjoyed the time that I got. I got it because of, like my dad, I was planning when I was 17 how to retire, and knowing that I'm going to live on less than what I make. And I haven't, I've been blessed. I've made a good living, but I haven't made a huge amount of money. But I could go on these trips and I didn't have to work. I didn't have to be there toiling away where the other parents were. And I really felt sad for them. Right. And I felt very, great gratitude that I had that mentoring or that, I don't know, that kind of that teaching from parents that grew up in the Great Depression to go, okay, I'm going to put money away. I'm going to get money working for me instead of the other way around.
Right. Right. And again, it didn't really hit me. I had one client actually in my education company that broke it down for me. He had sold a company. He was worth something like $100 million, and I was chatting with him one day in the kitchen. Because by the way, once he made the $100 million, he decided he really wanted to learn how to cook really well. So he spent all this time like making chili and like making chicken and like doing all these things that he would share with his family. That was his engagement. He wasn't going out and jet setting and whatnot. And he told me one time, just in passing, like, what you really buy with money is just time. And again, I was a young guy, so it's kind of like, you're buying time. He's like, yeah, because it's going to cost you a lot of money to take the time. Right. And ultimately, what I realized he was saying is like, look, you're going to have opportunity cost. You want to take a year off and you can make $300,000. It's going to cost you $300,000. Exactly. And you can only pay that $300,000 if you have the $300,000 or whatever you needed to live off of stashed away somewhere or generating in some other way. It's like, so you're literally buying your time with your lost opportunity. If you don't have the money to buy back the $300,000, then you have to keep working for it. And again, the concept of purchasing your own time back, purchasing your own life back with finance was one of the most profound things as a young person I figured out. It's like, okay, so if I like to think I need to make $200,000, then it's going to cost me $200 to get that year, right? Do I have the $200? Is there a way I could get that $200? Is there a way I could get that $200 at a young age and start buying my years back when they're most meaningful to me?
And that's the, where I feel most blessed. I've retired 3 different times in my life. And each time it wasn't a retirement in terms of what most people think of retirement. I'm going to kick back and I'm going to put
Pina coladas.
Yeah, I'm going to lay on the beach and have somebody bring me drinks. My retirements were, okay, I sold a company and I'm going to go build another company. I'm going to start a new whatever, a new avenue of business, if you will. And the only way I had the opportunity to do those multiple retirements and then changing is because I had made investments in my 20s. My first home I bought is $42,000 house, and I traded the down payment for a car. I mean, I had a car that, the guy wanted my car and I wanted his house. So there you go. My second home, my dad actually questioned me. Because again, my dad grew up, in the Great Depression. And he said, why does anybody need more than one house? I said, well, Dad, this house is going to be a rental. Someone's going to pay me, the rent. And at that time, how I could buy a house and the mortgage would be paid by the rental. So I said, basically, my renters are going to buy me my house. Well, I kept that concept going. I always lived on way less than I made. I got to 47 houses. And you can imagine where that went in terms of people buying my properties for me. Okay. And I'll never forget, I was at a seminar, I think 2003, 2004. And we were talking about some of the challenges we had. And it was my turn to talk about challenges. And I said, yeah, I've got all these renters and all these challenges, and I'm fixing this and I'm doing this. And I finally got a property manager, and the guy leading the conference, well, how many houses? I said, 47 properties, 47 different addresses. And the room just went silent, because I thought that's what everybody did. I had had my head down working and investing and saving so much. I had never stopped to compare notes with other people, and I thought everybody did that. And so apparently I had surrounded myself with people that do save and so we were helping each other by encouraging. And I guess that's a good point here is, are my friends encouraging me to save money and make investments? Or are my friends encouraging me to wear $300 jeans and, carry $1,000 purses and go on $6,000 or $8,000 vacation? What are my friends encouraging me to do?
Right.
And what's who's my tribe? Who have I surrounded myself with? And I really think, I was on a conversation last night with a friend of mine that, again, I went to school with. And he's like, I prefer being the millionaire next door. He said, very few of my neighbors know how much money I have. And he said, they certainly don't know it by what I drive. They don't know it by what I wear. They don't know it by what restaurants I eat at. And so the idea is, let's have some savings. Let's have some humbleness. Let's put it away, because then we, like you said, we're buying time. We're buying opportunity in the future.
Right. And your social engagements, I find, are the things that really drive the majority of your consumer spending, right? So if you have 10 friends that have awesome cars, they're going to talk about their cars. Guess what you're going to have? You're going to have an awesome car, right? If you have 10 friends that really enjoy eating out, right? You're going to have to pick up the tab at some point. You're going to eat out. You're going to get drinks. You're going to do these things. If you have friends that are like, hey, come over to my house. My wife figured out this chicken recipe that's really, really good. We crock pot it. It's awesome. We make tacos. It's a $20 meal. All of a sudden it's, oh, I better go find my chicken recipe, right? Yeah. And people, again, it's like money disappears and they're like, well, I don't know. This is just the way. I don't even know where the money's going. And the money's going to where your social engagements really are. That's the thing that's actually spending your money.
Who's your tribe?
Right.
Who are you surrounding yourself with? Because when I get together with my friends, guess what we talk about? We talk about investments. We talk about savings. We talk about how we're paying our kids' college tuition. We're talking about these different things, retirement plans, that kind of thing. We're not talking about what our next vacation is. We're not talking about the next $80,000 car we're going to buy. Right. And so, it's just a different mindset and where our focus is. I would challenge anyone to say they have a happier, more enjoyable life than I do. But it's not because I spend the most money. It's because of getting our investments in place. Warren Buffett, I've had occasion to be able to listen to him on different times. I love what the man says. He's whatever, I don't know, bazillion dollars.
Right.
Who knows how much money? But he's like, if you don't figure out how to make money while you're asleep, you're never going to be wealthy.
Right.
Well, the only way to make money while we sleep is to have investments. So I talk to my clients. I say, how much money do you make each night? They're like, I just go to sleep at night. I don't make any money. I say, well, every night when I go to sleep, the next morning, there's another $800 in my bank account. They're like, what? I said, yeah, my passive income, my investments, at this point in time, I don't know what it was. It was some years ago. I make $800 a day. Well, you go 800 times 30. Okay. Every single day, every single night I sleep. The next morning I make $800. There's $800 more in my net worth in my bank account. And they had no concept of that. They're like, what do you mean? They were just the opposite. Every single night they go to bed, and what do? They wake up
losing money.
They've lost because they've got credit card debt. They're making payments on their car loans. Maybe they're still making payments on their student loans. And they say, oh yeah, but my student loans are only 2% or 3%. Well, it's still 2 or 3%. So the idea that you want money to make, you want to figure out a way to make money while you sleep.
Right.
The only way to do that is to not spend all the money that you make. And the idea that, well, I'll save money or I'll have investments when I make more. Well, there's universal law that says you're only going to have money come into your life. The world is going to send you money based on how responsible you are. Okay. One of the proof of this is in lottery winners. Everybody thinks, oh my God, if I could just win the lottery. You know that there's a good portion of lottery winners that are worse off 3 years or 5 years later, even though they've won tens of millions of dollars. And you think, okay, money's the answer to everything. No, they've gone through it. They've had heartache. They've had bad luck. They've made bad investments. They didn't have any ability to make responsible decisions with their finances. The world took it away from them. And I'm not saying that they were robbed or anything, but the universe has taken money away from them because they haven't shown responsibility.
Right. Two things. One, I have a dear friend whose father-in-law actually, man, it's really rough. The father-in-law's dad, right, the grandfather, he scrimped and saved, bought all this commercial property throughout their town. They live from a different country, but purchased all these things. And the then father-in-law just started selling these things as he inherited them and poorly investing the money and then living off of it, going into the restaurant business, going into this business, loaning it to friends. Oh, it'll be great. I'll just give this $500,000 to this guy. He'll pay me 10%. No paper trail. Money never comes back. All of a sudden that investment's gone. All these things. And now he's living off of government assistance, not because he didn't have a great starting point.
Really?
Yes. It's one of those things where my friend is just, I mean, he's being a good son-in-law and doing his part and trying to help this elderly man who's made some poor decisions. I mean, we all have to kind of take care of our parents, but
sure,
it's a rough situation. And then as far as what you were saying with how much money do you sleep, one of the great points that a lot of the financial books laid out when I was younger is, look, people invest in college, and fine, education's great, especially if you take it seriously and you study something that's valuable to you and meaningful. But the degrees largely only work when you work. And that was something that at 22 or 23, I really sat back and thought about, like, yeah, that's totally true. So fast forward 20 years, I have another dear friend from college who he joined the military, but then went on to get an MBA, went to a very good MBA school. And now he makes, I don't know, $300,000-$400,000 a year. He's making good money,
okay.
But he's wholly aware that if he loses his job, and he's gone through some phases of consulting and different jobs, in the interim, like, I'm making no money. I'm burning everything. Like, yeah, we have savings, but it's all getting torched. And he very astutely looked at my situation, like, no matter what happens to you, you make money today.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, that's right. And he said, well, so my degree, and again, this was him kind of coming to this realization. He's like, my MBA is valuable, but it's only valuable every hour I put in. He's like, you invested in real estate predominantly. Your real estate's valuable whether or not you're awake, you're asleep, whether even you're alive, right? Like, I die, my MBA goes away. You pass away, God forbid, it all goes to your kids and your wife.
It's so interesting. You've made investments. You've bought real estate. And I hear all the time, well, that's easy for you. You had some extra money. If I only had some extra money, and then they go out and get in their brand new car, or they get on their whatever, iPhone, whatever it is now. What's the latest iPhone? 15 or something?
27. I have no idea, Zane.
Yeah. I don't. I have an iPhone 6, which works perfectly fine.
Yeah, right.
You know,
not a great camera, but that's okay. You're not taking selfies.
Yeah, that's another issue.
Am
I buying a phone because I can set it on top of a desk and charge it, or because it has 14 cameras in the back and it does special effects, or am I buying the phone to talk to people and get my emails and my texts? Anyway,
if I may, it's something you said that irks me to no end. First off, when I bought my initial properties, I had almost no money, and I bought them because I had built up a reputation with the people selling them, so they trusted me. So my reputation actually counted for a lot of money, because again, the first property I bought, I only had 5% down, and they loaned me another 5%. And it was back when you could get a loan for anything. So I got an 80% first loan, 10% second loan, and then a 5% final loan from the seller. And I brought the 5.
Yeah.
The second property I bought, I took 0 down because the people trusted me so much they owner carried back. I have purchased 2 additional properties in the last year with no money down on extended contracts, because I have developed the wherewithal and reputation around the people in the community that these people were absolutely happy to agree to this deal where there was no money down. And we negotiated a deal that did not require me to bring an excessive amount of capital to the table.
So you've now got investments that are paying you money that are going to be part of your retirement. And you made those instead of having the most stylish clothes,
right?
Instead of having the latest iPhone.
And not requiring $500,000 cash, $1 million cash. The whole objection, you could do that because you had money. 1, that's erroneous. And 2, I had the money even if I needed it.
Yeah. Well, one that came to mind while you were talking about that, I bought an apartment complex, I don't know, a few years ago. And I had a friend ask me, "What'd you pay for that?" And I told him, I traded a car for it. He said, "What kind of car was it?" I said, "It was a $6,000 car." And he didn't get where I was going with it, because I had bought my first house with a $6,000 car. That was my down payment on a $42,000 house. I then let that house appreciate and sold it, and sold it, and sold it, and rolled it, and rolled it. There's most real estate people know 1031 exchanges.
Sure.
So I exchanged. I bought a $3.3 million apartment complex for $6,000 of my own money. The rest of it was money that had rolled from appreciating over 20 or 25 years of real estate investments. And that's the key, is getting started somewhere. Okay. People always say, "Oh, well, if I had your money, my life would be I'd make investments if I made the kind of money you make." Realize that if you don't start somewhere, you're never going to get into the game. And that's why it's important when we talk about, living frugally, living below your means. I like Dave Ramsey. He's got a thing out now. He says, act your wage. Don't act your age, act your wage. When you're making 100 grand, live like you're making 100 grand, which I'll get a little bit off subject, but it just popped into my mind. When you make 100 grand, how much money do you make?
Well,
okay.
I mean, that's a really loaded question.
Yeah, but see, what we have is we always like to talk about how much we make. We don't talk about how much we have to spend. And we don't, one of the, I talk about the 5 or the 6 key things that you need to understand about finance. One of them is understand how much money you make. Okay. So if you have a $100,000 salary, you're not making 100 grand. You're making about 65 grand. Are you with me?
Oh, 100%.
Okay. But if
I'm self-employed, man. I understand 100% where you're going.
But if you're going through life telling yourself and telling your friends and telling possibly your spouse and whoever, or not even telling them necessarily, but just living like, okay, I make 100 grand. Well, I can afford this. I can afford this. I can afford this. Instead of saying, I make 65 grand. Because 35 of it's taken off the top to taxes or to Medicare and Social Security and what's called FICA. all these
And
different
let's
things.
acknowledge that you're going to have to afford some manner of housing, be it owned or rented. So, and that's non-negotiable. So on top of taxes, you have a house payment, probably at least $2,000 a month. So you go from 65 down to 41.
Yeah, you can quickly have that go away. But if you're living your life thinking you're making 100 or 200, you can see how this can get way out of hand. If you make 600K, 600,000 a year, you really only have about $380,000 to spend. But if you're living your life thinking you're making 600,000 and your spouse is living that way and your kids, you can see where this misconception and this problem is created very quickly. Gosh, where'd those credit card bills come from? Why do I have all this debt? Oh, we're driving, how much money's sitting on our garage in the form of car payments? All these things where we're living as if we're making this amount of money, but we really aren't. That's, again, why I tried to turn my clients' thinking and their mindsets and say, don't tell me how much you make. Tell me how much you save or how much you invest or how much you have that's ready to be invested.
Right.
And the sooner we get that started, the better. So, kind of the take-home message here is, let's get away from society. Let's get away from social norms. And like my buddy I went to school with, live like the millionaire next door. Thomas Stanley had a tremendous book. And just be okay living without the flash, without the, you don't have to be seen at the fancy restaurant. You don't have to have the latest iPhone. You don't have to have the clothes that have some celebrity's name on the back of them.
Right.
All these
the
things.
point of that book was really that the PAWs win, the prodigious accumulators of wealth. That was the whole point of the Millionaire Next Door. The most popular vehicle amongst American millionaires was a Ford F-150.
Yeah.
Right. And most American millionaires do not lease their cars. So there were all of these things, to your point, which is not focusing on the millionaires are made by increasing their income. It's the people that, relative to their income, how much do they save? Those are the people that book focused on.
Yeah. So let's not talk about what we make.
Right.
Let's talk about what we save and what we have to invest. And then that changes our mindset. So we're making different decisions. Because when you were, let's take it back. Let's say you're 7 or 8 years old. How did you make your decisions on whatever? If you were buying something at the grocery store.
Do I have the money?
Do I have the money? And how long do we do that? The problem is a lot of us continue making that same decision, involving finance all through our lives. Do I have the money? Are you going to buy that house? Well, yeah, I've got the money, so I'm going to go ahead and buy it. Are you going to buy that car? Are you going to go on that trip? Well, yeah, I've got the money. Instead of saying, is this a good idea? Is it a good time for this? Should I do this or should I invest it? And so often we've carried that one form of decision making. Can I afford it? Do I have the money? To all the way through our lives. And at 30, 40, 50 years old, I would see these people as in my securities business and say, how do you make your decisions? And what it would come down to is if we can afford it. Years ago, and I got out of the business, but I owned convenience stores. And I hated it because we would watch people come in. We also had a check cashing service, and they would cash their paychecks on Friday afternoons. And then they would go buy beer and cigarettes from our store. And I just couldn't stand, because I'd look at it and go, okay, well, I just cashed your check. This is years ago, obviously. Yeah. I just cashed your check for $300 and you just spent $150 of it in my store.
On beers and cigarette.
Yeah. For their supply for the week or for whatever, 2 weeks. So I'm like, you've got $150 of your $300 paycheck left to live the rest of your whatever time period, week or 2 weeks. I couldn't stand that because I love making the profit. I love, convenience stores are fairly profitable, but I looked at these people going, how can you do this week after? I saw the same people every Friday afternoon would be coming into the store, cashing their check, buying beer and cigarettes and maybe some food. But I thought, where is that going to put you 10, 15, 20 years from now? And I couldn't be a part of that. I sold the convenience stores to my partner because I just didn't want to feel like, yeah, I made my money off these people and where are they going to be 10, 20, 30 years from now? And that's really the hope in any time I talk with someone about their finances is let's build a tribe around you people that will help you make better decisions, like the people in my life that have helped me. You know, I've had wonderful mentors, but let's think about something down the road and go, where are we going to get? And get back to your point. I'm buying my time, my freedom to be able to make these decisions, not based on whether I can afford it or not, but is this a good decision down the road? You know, I read some history books, and they said that back in the Native Americans made decisions, and I don't know if this is true or not, but they said they made decisions based on, is this a good thing to do for 7 generations from now? Mm-hmm. How many fish they took out of a stream, how many buffalo they shot, where they lived, what grasslands they, you know, let their horses and their livestock feed on. Is this a good decision seven generations from now? What if we put that into our lives and said, you know, is this a good decision even for my next generation? Is this restaurant that we're going to go eat at that's $400? Is that a good way of spending our money? Do I really need the iPhone 15 when I already have an iPhone 13? You know, that car that I bought 3 years ago, it's still getting me around. Can I do something better with that money and invest it? And so if we surround ourselves with people that talk like this and make decisions like this and encourage us, we're probably going to make better decisions, aren't we?
I think so.
You know, you touched on it. If you run around with 5 people that sell shoes, what are you probably going to have?
Shoes.
Lots of shoes.
Lots of shoes.
If you run around with 5 people that go out on Friday night and spend all their money, what are you going to do?
I'm going to spend all my money.
So I want to have 5 people around me that are going to encourage me about, you know, about savings and about investing, and people that I can share my ideas with. And hopefully if I run around with 5 millionaires, guess what I'm going to become? I'm going to become the 6th one. So anyway, Matt, I appreciate your time and having this discussion. And as we move forward, just helping move people forward in terms of generational ideas, generational wealth, and building a legacy life.
Beautiful. Thanks, Lane.
Thanks.